till shade is gone,
till water is gone,
into the shadow with teeth bared,
screaming defiance with the last breath,
to spit in Sightblinder's eye on the last day.
by my honor and the light.
My life will be a dagger for Sightblinder's heart.
Until the last day. To Shyle Ghul itself.
This is A Dagger for Sightblinder, a podcast focused on all things Wheel of Time, with your hosts,
Sarah Lucas
and Adam Tricola. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Dagger for Sightblinder. May you find shade this day. Sarah, how's the shade preparation going, or retrieval, or finding this?
I think I've found a good amount. How are you, Adam?
I've decided to be a hypocrite and just totally disregard the notion of shade entirely.
Oh, that seems very out of character for you.
I know. Well, I know I'm generally around a lot of shade and a lot of shady people, but I'm turning over a new leaf, which I guess in some ways does generate shade. So,
yeah,
depending on the size of the leaf.
I mean, it's probably enough shade for like an ant.
Right. Well, I mean, or if it's a big leaf, like 2 ants. So that being said, what is this, shade for an ant?
Are you saying ants or ant? Because you're gonna need a much bigger leaf for an ant.
Well, ants have their own leaves.
That's true.
So they can generate their own shade. Oh, that's fun. Anyways, enough about shade.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that that's part of our intro. What do we got going today, Sarah?
All right, so we are doing The Great Hunt chapters 30 to 39. We're almost done. Like, this is like the last, not the last, but like the second last chunk of the book. We're at like the 3/4 way mark, I'd say.
It is, yeah. Like you might say the 4/5 mark.
Yeah, I guess that would be more accurate.
Because there's 50 chapters, and we're covering the penultimate group of 10 chapters.
It's fine. Math.
I'm sorry if math makes you uncomfortable, but sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about that, and then there's like a tiny bit of show news, just a little bit.
Okay. So, what do you want to talk about first?
You want to talk about the show first because it's tiny news?
Yeah.
What?
I was asking you, and you just decided.
I know.
You and
I turned it around into a question for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, your Canadian shipness.
All right. So the show is still being filmed, but they've obviously already like got a good chunk of the episodes done. And there were some images that leaked that showed the one power, and basically it showed it being, I guess the visual effects of it are going to be done differently based off where they're channeling the source from. So if it's, earth or fire or air or whatever, it's going to have a different look to it. So the ones that leaked showed, I believe it was air and fire side by side, and you could see air was basically that pure white strand we've been seeing this whole time, and fire had this like hint of red throughout it. So they're going to be changing that up a little bit in season 2, allegedly. All
right. I guess that's, what are your thoughts?
I feel like it makes sense because it is talked about in the book. Mm-hmm. So it does make sense to kind of illustrate that. And I hope that they will explain it a tiny bit in the show, because I feel like if they don't, it could be a little confusing for viewers that haven't read the books of why they're all different colors.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to give a deeper explanation of what the power is and how it works. Mm-hmm. Like the Nynaeve's explosion of power to heal everyone and everything. That was a pretty cool thing, and to defeat Logain and everything. That in the show, that was sweet. That was awesome, in fact, and epic. But they don't really explain how it happened. It was just like this thing, this event of almost just nature.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought it was cool, but at the same time, they'll need to explain it a little bit more. Though I think in a show they could really go like hurt themselves by getting too technical about these things too.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why, I don't know, and they're gonna have to explain it in a way that isn't openly explaining it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's fine. That's something that a lot of people criticized the show for. Actually, I never cared at all. Even they do the light and the dark, or whatever, white and black. That was enough for me. I could be happy with the rest of the show being that. But they do in the books describe it different colors and stuff. They can do that without breaking the bank. I'm good with it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's basically the show news.
What I'm curious about is if they're waiting to see if Lord of the Rings does well, to see if they keep going with this show.
Oh, to see if they renew it again.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
I didn't think of that.
Because they're spending a ruinous amount of money on the Lord of the Rings show, and you just have to think maybe they'd just like to cut the 80 million per season that they're doing for Wheel of Time.
Right. If it's not doing as well.
Right.
Or maybe if Lord of the Rings doesn't do as well as they think it will, they can reallocate some money.
Right. This money, the money that they're spending on this is very small compared to the Lord of the Rings stuff. I mean, the initial Lord of the Rings season was like almost 500K, or sorry, 500 million.
500 million, yeah.
Yeah, which is obviously way more than the 80K they spent on Wheel of Time. And you just have to wonder if this. Then again, Wheel of Time was the top show of the whole year.
Right, so you would think that would carry some weight.
Yeah, like it's still gonna gain momentum. It'll be an even bigger season if they continue it out. So we'll just have to see. I mean, I hope they continue it, obviously.
Yeah, I think they're smart not to have them compete with each other, have them air separately. So
yeah, oh, definitely. Well, because the majority of people, I mean, potentially myself included, I might watch Lord of the Rings before I watched Wheel of Time. Right. Just depending, A lot of people recognize Lord of the Rings way before they recognize Wheel of Time.
Right, absolutely.
So, that being said, colors for our powers. There's pretty slim pickings on show news. So why don't we go to the book?
Yeah, let's go to the book. So again, we're going to talk about chapters 30 to 39 specifically in The Great Hunt, but basically anything beforehand is fair game, including anything in the first book, The Eye of the World.
Yeah.
So spoilers all over the place.
Everywhere. The spoilers abound.
Yep. All right. You want to get into it?
Yeah, we're abound to get into it.
Oh boy. All right. So chapter 30 is Deus Daemar. So basically this is after Rand and Loyal were kind of hiding out behind the Illuminators Guild, if you remember and recall, and there was the Trollocs outside. They're hiding out. Anyway, so no one really knows what's gone on there. But Rand is back at the inn. And he has been getting these invites continuously from people all over in the town. They want him to, I guess, like go to like a party, like a social gathering. Everyone wants to know about him, and he's just been ignoring them or burning them or whatever. And he ends up getting 2 invites that he initially wants to ignore, and he wants to burn them. And Huron is the one that tells him, like, this probably isn't a good idea because they're from 2 nobles in town, one of them being Lord Barthanes and the other one being king. And Huron's like, this isn't going to be good if you ignore them. And Rand wants to leave. He doesn't want to be there anymore, but he ends up getting this like really clever idea to just go into the common room of the inn with both of these invites, not having them been open, but just so that people see him with them and they can kind of whisper among the town and have this rumor mill run that he did have the invites and he did get them, but he hadn't opened them yet. So we don't know what he's going to choose. And it was this really clever like play. And he knows that it's a short term play, which is why he's like, we got to leave because this trick isn't gonna last very long. But I thought it was very clever of him to do that. What did you think?
Yeah, I think that was it was cool. So you see Rand start to adapt a little bit. He's feeling this profound annoyance, but I think that he's starting to see the wisdom, at least on the fringes of it, of the whole, when in Rome sort of thing. And so yeah, like at first he just wanted to throw the invitations away. He didn't. Everyone thinks he's playing Dace de Mar by throwing the invitations in the fire, but they're waiting to see who he's going to accept it for. But eventually he did think better of it, and yeah, it's just a cool thing to see him kind of adapt a little bit and come up with something and show that it's not just, even if he doesn't want to play, he's still proficient at it. And honestly, like the whole politics it's good for him to start working on that a little bit, especially if there's any truth to what Moraine claims about him being the Dragon Reborn, even though he doesn't see it that way. I think, he's also, you see him take more and more control of his group, as like he's the decision maker. He could throw those letters away or keep them, but the other two are there as advisors. Right. At the end of the day, that everyone acknowledges that he's in charge, and like he's just assumed full command. He doesn't even think about it anymore. He's just fully in charge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so he's doing that, and then him and Loyal end up going to the guardhouse, and they've basically been checking every day if Lord Ingtar's come through the town, looking for Celine. They just keep asking, and it's pretty humorous because every single time the guard is like, who are you asking for? I don't know who you're asking. And just it's the same thing every day, and you can hear this frustration from Rand that's like, I'm asking you about the same people I asked you about yesterday and the day before. Anyway, but they end up they leave the guardhouse and they go back to the inn, and on their way back into the city, they see like this stack of smoke, and are just making their way towards the inn. And as they get closer and closer to it, they realize it is the inn that's on fire. And they get there. Huron is knocked out in their room, and the chest is gone. So that is awful. Damn it all. But they've got to get Huron out, and it's just sad because Loyal has to leave his books to burn, and he obviously doesn't want to leave them.
I love that he didn't even like consider. He's like, well, of course we're gonna save Huron.
Yeah, but that it's a thing.
Yeah, it's painful for him. It's sad. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
So they do save Huron, and on the way out, that's magically when Ingtar and Mat and Perrin show up again. And the gang's all reunited at the end of chapter 30.
Yeah, but yeah, the band is back in town or something. Yeah. I hate this in some ways because it's like they've been in Carrion for a week or however long, and then right as they're like safe, they're going to be safe. They've got an Aes Sedai, they've got a whole troop of men, they've got the Ingtar and the safety of Mat needs his dagger, and they could have just it was literally like 1 hour off, and
right,
yeah,
and but gone.
I mean that's part of the fun of this book though too, of just the twists and turns, and I would have never guessed that they would just go and steal the horn back from Fane with just a couple people, like with Rand and Huron and Loyal. Right. Like I would have never get like it's fun, and then that didn't end up really like helping a huge amount, but it's
Mhm.
just a cool thing to, I don't know, it's fun. It's a good twist that you don't enjoy your heroes being foiled as much as when they triumph, but
Right. Absolutely. Um, yeah, so that's that.
Mhm.
Okay, so chapter 31 on the scent. So Varen obviously is with Ingtar and everyone who's shown up, and she is healing Rand and Huron because they're obviously injured from the fire, and she can't obviously do anything for Matt. But Matt is definitely looking worse and worse. Um, anyway, but Rand has to tell Matt and Perrin that he did have the horn and a dagger inside the chest with the horn, and he's lost them both. And that kind of sucks to say lost, can I just say, because he didn't really lose them. Like they were stolen, but
Well, but they're lost to his possession. Like he
they are.
doesn't.
It's, I don't know. I just associate the word lost with like losing something, like it's your own fault. You've misplaced it, and
Mhm.
I don't know. I
Well,
feel like
that go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I feel like it's just a matter of definition,
Totally.
frankly. You know, I could say I'm lost, and you could mean like, wait, like you don't know where you are, or
Mhm.
like you are just totally screwed for some unknown reason, or like your soul is in
Lost.
jeopardy. I
Mhm.
mean, like there's a ton of different ways to be lost. So
Mhm.
you know, I I don't know,
That's
whatever.
fair.
We're
That's fair.
quibbling, so we can
All right. So
dispense with the quibbling.
um
Hmm.
Rand does end up at some point, he ends up, I think he's he's changing his clothes. Yeah, that's right. He's changing his clothing because obviously they've all been, you
Right.
know, ruined from this fire. But he's got all of Celine's notes in his old coat pocket. So he's taking
Hmm.
them out and is burning them, which is interesting. He wants to
Well,
know.
oh man, so there's a couple of interesting things. Could we rewind for just one
Yeah.
second? And
Yeah.
so Ingtar and everyone arrive, and they need to get to an inn to talk about everything. So
Hmm.
this is before he gets rid of the notes and everything.
Hmm.
And so Rand's like, okay, so we need to do this, and we need to, and he's like, and then he realized everyone's just staring at him, and he's like, oh crap, like Ingtar's in charge. He's just
Right.
used to, he's assuming command, and he tells Ingtar, like, I'm sorry about that. And Ingtar seems to be fine with it. He's like, oh yeah, Moraine said I chose wisely as for to have you as my second.
Hmm.
So Ingtar seemed to be okay with it. It's just a very interesting thing of he was just a tag along, and now he's uh, like he's ready to assume full command if Ingtar isn't there, and like that transition is just to me really cool. That kind of awkward moment where,
Hmm.
and Perrin keeps commenting mentally on, I think he actually, like, he looks like a noble. I wouldn't believe that he's not a noble either. If
Hmm.
I didn't know better, I believe it too. The clothes fit.
Right. And it's funny too that you mention it, because it almost feels like such a smooth transition for Rand. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't feel jarring as a reader to have him be calling the shots.
Yeah, he did a really good job of making it like, okay, I am reluctantly taking on the mantle of leadership between me, Huron, and Loyal, because they
Hmm.
need me to be that. And then over time, he does just feel more and more comfortable with it, to the point of not just commanding like a small group. He's like, okay, like we have an Aes Sedai here and a bunch of armed soldiers, and I'm still just going to start telling everyone what I think needs to happen.
Right. Exactly. Um, that is a good point. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he does burn the notes here, which is
Ooh.
interesting as well.
Also, something really interesting happens when he does that. There's a
Okay.
huge gust of wind that comes in, and it's like it's going to like mess with the fire and everything, that like it's almost as if some
Hmm.
supernatural force saw that happen and was displeased.
Right. Did not like that they were being burned.
Mhm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like they were burned, and then that happened immediately.
Mhm. Funny, eh?
Well, so I mean, there's something I am a little bit hinting at. I guess I won't say more right
Yeah.
now, but it's I don't know for sure. There's hints to the that could maybe suggest something else though.
Mhm. So shortly after this, we end up switching to Perrin's point of view in
Oh.
this chapter as well.
Mhm.
And he kind of has this train of thought running about he's correlating Rand to something the wolves have been saying, and he is thinking that Rand is what the wolves call the shadow killer.
Mhm.
Which I thought was interesting to note and keep in mind. And he's also just kind of getting more in tune, like in this chapter, with his new, I don't know if you want to call it personality, but traits of whatever is going on with Perrin. And he's commenting on how, the lamb is cooked, but he wishes it was more raw. And these thoughts that he's having are just happening, and he's not totally on board with them. Like, you can tell he's a little disturbed that he's thinking these things, but they're just kind of free forming. Anyway, so Rand ends up explaining the portal stones as well in this chapter to the group, and the group ends up agreeing that the best thing to do is to try to get Rand to go to these parties that he's basically been invited to by Lord Barthanes and the King, and they need to try and steal the horn back. And Rand is, not really on board with this because he doesn't think it's going to fly that he's going to be believed to be a lord. But begrudgingly, I say begrudgingly, but he does end up agreeing. Like, I think this is the most logical plan that they have.
Sure.
Right.
Well, yeah. So, yeah, it's just an interesting Taviran thing.
Right.
They just happen to have the invites there and everything. And yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
but I think it's interesting too, though, Varen's presumption as well. Like, they all kind of are presuming command of the group in a way.
Right.
So, like, technically Ingtar's in charge, but Varen's made it pretty clear that she thinks she's in charge. And she's getting a little bit of pushback from Ingtar, but then Rand is also just randomly every once in a while like, oh, well, we're gonna do this. And so there's like this really weird crisis of who's actually in charge and everything. But so Varen gets both of those letters, and before they really make a full decision, she just crumples up the one from Goldrian, from the king.
Yeah. And they're going to Lord Barthanes.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, well, thanks for making our decision for us.
Yeah.
Baron. Well, that was great. What if that was just an like, I don't know, just seemed a little bit crazy to me that she just destroyed it. But yeah. I also just like the continued, like, they keep introducing new factors. Like, Rand, everyone's like, wait, how did you get an invite to see the king and to see Barthanes at the same time? Like, Rand keeps just turning their heads like, whoa, really? Like, that's amazing. Kind of, I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
Right.
So
it is interesting, like, how it all just kind of is unfolding for Rand, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next chapter is Dangerous Words. So Uno is escorting Rand and Huron and everyone to Barthanes. They're going there. They're going to the party. And Huron and Matt are both made to kind of act as the servants of the group of Rand's, which annoys Matt. And I'm not surprised it annoys Matt at all by this. It's just humorous. But the job is for Huron and Matt to go in as the servants to this party, and they're going to look for the horn. They're going to look for dark friends. They're going to look for the dagger. They're basically going to look for anything suspicious, and hopefully find it, and they can all get out of there. So while they're off doing this, Barthanes is questioning Rand, and he's like questioning him heavily to the point that Rand is feeling super uncomfortable, and just also he's answering the questions, and like he keeps remembering what I think it was Varen had told him to say, and like he's answering in a way that he's pulling off this Lord like vibe, I guess you would call it, without really raising too many.
Well, Varen said to do what Lan had taught him. Like when he addressed the Amerlin seat, he wanted to. She was like, yeah. So a lot of his responses are, I'm not. They're like, oh, are you really a blade master? And he says, I am not yet. I'm 1 year old or whatever, which is how long he's had his sword.
Yeah, exactly. So, which is clever how he is doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so he also sees Tom Marilyn in there in another room, mm-hmm. playing as the entertainer for the guests. And he does end up talking to Tom a little bit at the end of this. And Tom warns him about, getting involved with the Aes Sedai, and whether or not Rand should actually trust them as much as he is. So you can really tell Tom's true feelings here.
Sure.
Or what he's presenting as his true feelings.
Right. So I thought it was funny, the lead up to this was mm-hmm. there was all these girls who came up, all these women who were suggesting that maybe mm-hmm. Rand could come visit them for I don't know, some interesting discussions.
Right. And I think it is in this chapter, if I'm remembering correct, he ends up having this whole like internal dialogue with himself about how he can't be with anyone, and if he's going to be with anyone, it would be Egwene. And it's just a very funny train of thought, because he's clearly jumping back and forth between whether or not he should stay true, quote unquote, to Egwene, even though he can't be with her, or just mm-hmm. Go with whoever he wants to go with.
Well, and it does show that like he's got good principles. He's got some good character, that he doesn't want to just, even though he doesn't see much future with Egwene, he doesn't necessarily think that it's going to be a prudent course mm-hmm. of action or something that would actually benefit him or Egwene if he decided to just kind of jump ship. And even though it would be excusable from our eyes, we're like, well, Egwene's going to be Aes Sedai, why would you stay? Why would you feel like you have to stay with her? But the fact that he's feeling conflicted, and therefore he's like, well, if I'm feeling conflicted, then maybe I just shouldn't do anything with anyone else until I've resolved this, to make, let's be patient, let's make good decisions. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think it's a pretty admirable thing, even if he's a little awkward about it.
Yeah. It's just funny because it feels like he goes back and forth all the time on this.
He does.
Yeah, he does. Mm-hmm. But it is admirable. I'm not gonna disagree with that.
I think it's funny though. Tom's like, oh yeah, such and such woman, noble woman, would give you an education that every man should receive at least once in their lifetime. And it's like, wow.
Yeah, but Rand is really good in this at playing the part of the Lord as well, because while Barthanes is questioning him, Huron mm-hmm. ends up coming over to be like, to tell him, oh, your servant man, or however he phrases mm-hmm. it, tripped and hurt his ankle or something along those lines, hurt himself. And Rand responds in a way like, because Matt is his friend, mm-hmm. I think Rand's natural inclination would be like, oh, okay, let's go see how he is, and like, have that kind of empathy. And instead he's just immediately was like, oh, like what good is he gonna be to me if he can't walk? Which is exactly how you would probably react if it was your servant. that had hurt themselves. So it is a very like on point in character for what he's trying to portray.
Yeah, I think it's also they're also kind of thumbing their noses at the elite in this. Like,
Oh,
it's
totally.
Robert Jordan it's not only showing like, so Rand is just saying nonsense to Barthanes and say, or telling the truth, and Barthanes is like, oh, I had no idea people from where you're from Andor were so good at the great game, and Rand is like, I have no idea what's going on. He's just answering random stuff, and like they're so steeped in this that they're jumping at every shadow possible, and so they're reading nuance that doesn't even exist, and then they're also just showing like, look at how disconnected the nobles are from the rest of everyone. Like, nobles are just stupid, like they have all the money and all the power, but that's not how it should be.
All right. Okay, so next chapter 33.
Sure.
A message from the dark. So Huron ends up taking Rand outside into the garden, where Loyal and Matt and everyone are, and they show him this like walled in enclosure, and there used to be there's a way gate inside the walls, and Huron had said that the scent that he's been tracking, it went through the ways, so the horn has obviously left and it went through the ways. And Rand is like, oh, like we can totally follow it. Like, and he's, inspecting the wall, trying to get it to open, which he does. He opens this way gate. And Loyal sees Machin Chin right away inside, just waiting. And they can hear it and everything. And Rand is trying to, convince Huron that you can go into this. We can go into the ways and we can track the horn and follow Fane from here, but they end up deciding that they can't use this way gate. It's too dangerous, and they close it, and they end up heading back inside, and yeah, so they head back inside, where they decide that they're going to have to find a different way to go after this horn. And Barthanes ends up giving a message to Rand from Padan Fane, which is essentially saying that he's going to wait for him on Toman Head, which is super important because this is exactly what was written in the dungeon several chapters ago. And Varen makes this connection. She's like, that's Toman Head is connected to the writings that were in the dungeon. So she suggests using a way gate from somewhere else, and can they go to studying Sofu, because Matt is getting way worse without this dagger. He's just like, it sounds like he only has a matter of weeks to live, essentially, if they don't get the dagger back.
Yep.
Like, it's sounding quite dire for him.
Yeah. So, gosh, this was a long chapter, wasn't it?
It was. There was a lot in this chapter. There's a lot in all, like, I feel like these 10 chapters, there's so much happening to kind of just push everything forward.
Yeah. Well, let's continue on then.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what happens. I mean, it's Machin Shin. It's a little bit unsettling. And
it is.
And I like the way Barthanes admitted he was a dark friend without admitting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as soon as you've got this message being delivered from Padan Fane, you're like, okay, cool. Awesome. This is such a sad chapter. The Wheel Weaves, chapter 34. So this is after Barthanes has had his party, and Tom is heading back to the inn where he's staying, and he ends up getting there. He walks back into his room, and Dina is dead in bed. Her throat's been slit, and there are two attackers essentially waiting and trying to attack him, and he spins around, instantly kills one. He's got these knives that he's throwing, and he ends up wounding another one, and begins questioning him, and realizes that these attackers are sent, they want info on Rand, and they're saying that they want it for Barthanes. and they want to know everything. And this attacker's trying to like con Tom into giving this information to him to sell it, but then also like everyone wants this information on Rand, so if they can sell it together, like they'll make all of this money, and it's all, you know, this whole scheme to get rich essentially. And it's just so heartbreaking here because Tom's like, yeah, you know, like you made a pretty big mistake though, and you shouldn't have gone after the girl, and just the girl being Dina, and just kills this guy.
Just kills him.
Just kills him. And it's so sad. And anyway, so the innkeeper comes in, Zara, and she ends up explaining that these guys actually worked for the king, for Galdrian. And you know, she points out that these attackers are dead, Dina's dead, people are going to assume that Tom was responsible. And you know, she's like, you got to get out of the city. You need to leave. And he wants to go kill somebody still. He says, like, there's one more person I got to go kill. And she's like, well, Barthanes is already dead. Like, he was found torn to pieces. And the only way that they knew it was him is because his head was on a spike. Like, something or someone just tore him to pieces overnight.
Yeah. We don't really find out about what happened there.
No, we do not. But so Tom ends up leaving, and then we go to Pat and Fane.
Yeah. It's a sad part. It's also, you know, before he gets there and finds out about all that stuff, like he's playing for the nobles way into the night because they're just being a bunch of crap heads, and you know, like he was trying to mock them by playing commoner songs, but then they thought it would be funny to hear more of them, and were making fun of the commoners, and it's, you know, and then so he's at a bad night, and then it gets way worse, and then he's like, all right, let's go kill the frickin' king. You know, it's one of those catalyst moments of like he could have just had a good life and been irrelevant to everything, but someone decided to mess with him just for fun, like for no real reason. And like you know, and I always think it's interesting, like the bad guys have this disconnect of like they just don't care about life in general, and so, you know, they're like, well, everyone else shares the same, you know, same view as us, and as it turns out, not so much. So
not so much.
Yeah, I loved his line there, actually, of, you know, you made one mistake. You shouldn't have gone after the girl.
Yeah, it really like stuck out.
Yeah, it was powerful.
Yeah, so then the rest of the chapter though is with Pat and Fane, and he is headed to Falm. So he's going to Turok, which is the same guy where oh man, I'm blanking on his name.
Bail Doman.
That's the one. Thank you. Where he was.
I bailed you out there, didn't I?
You did bail me out. Thank you. Totally spaced on his name. So anyway, so he's going to Turok, and he shows him this chest, and you know, he can't get it open. But they do there, and you know, they take the horn out and they put it in on a display, and Pat and Fane wants to keep the dagger. He's like, oh, the dagger's mine, and wants to keep it for himself. And Turok's like, no. Like, how can this be yours if it was in a chest that you didn't know how to open?
Right.
And it's just like, yeah, that's a pretty logical question to ask here. So, but he does say like, he wants Pat and Fane to stay and to entertain him, and that he will stop any dark friends from pursuing Pat and Fane. Which is interesting, because I would think Pat and Fane wouldn't care about dark friends.
Well, but he accused Rand al'Thor of being the dark friend. That's the connection. Is he said he said, Randall Thor will be here, a vile, dark friend. You couldn't imagine the vile things, the atrocities he's committed. He's going to be coming to steal the horn from me. And that's why Chirac says that.
Makes more sense.
Totally.
Okay, so next chapter.
Yep.
Steading's tofu.
Tofu. I don't know. I've just said tofu because it's fun.
Tofu. I don't know.
Sofu. This is how they pronounce it in the thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how they pronounce it, and I think it's sofu. So I don't know.
Sofu. It's sofu. Mm-hmm.
On that tangent. So we're back with Rand, and they are heading to the steading because that's where the waygate is, and they feel like the waygate is still the fastest way to catch up to Pat and Fane. And Perrin is asking Loyal about safety in the steading, and you can tell there's still that concern. And as they are approaching kind of like the center of this steading, they see 3 Aiel maidens of the spear kind of come out, and there is like a little bit of a standoff, and they no one actually is hurt, but it seems like maybe something could have happened. If I believe it's one of the Ogiers mentions, like, you remember there's like essentially a truce of sorts, and they end up leaving. But Matt and Perrin explain that they think that these Aiel are looking for Rand, and they already saw another one earlier. So yeah, and this whole time, Loyal's, I find this funny, Loyal's just worried that he's going back into the steading, and the women there planning to make him get married and have him settle down. He's just so worried that this is going to be a possibility for him.
Dear Lord, I mean, this is a really interesting, like, it's a matriarchy is what it is, like. And I would feel nervous in that situation too, where at any point someone could just take my freedom away from me as I perceived it. And even if like we as a society kind of hold this value of being married, like, oh, like I want to get married and whatever, like all this stuff, I think that it would, if you don't have a choice about it, then it's not necessarily like it just becomes a thing that happens to you. It doesn't become like this thing to be anticipated and excited about. It's just like, all right, you stupid person, like we can't get you to behave. We're going to get you a minder, like we're going to get you a babysitter, basically.
Right.
And and then you have to do what she says.
Well, and I found it interesting because he's explaining it to he's explaining it, I think it's to Perrin, maybe.
Well, and Matt this whole time, Matt's just being kind of a dick throughout. Like he's really like, he's being extremely unpleasant about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, but Loyal's explaining that, like, he doesn't have a say in this. It's just right. If they like you and they deem you to be a good fit for whichever woman, that's it. The decision's done.
Yep, game over.
So I can understand his worry because he doesn't have a say in it.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I can understand his worry, his concern. I just, it's just this thing of, it just sucks. It sucks. I can understand his agitation. So yeah, and it's interesting to see the Aiel there. They get veiled and stuff. I'm excited for you to see more Aiel as the storyline progresses. So so this is half of the part with steadying Sofu. The next chapter.
There is the next chapter, which is among the elders, because while they're there, they get called to go to the elders, to the Ogier. So Rand goes with Loyal and the group, and he does end up suggesting that Loyal maybe not come in because maybe it'll work in their favor of sorts. But they go in, and right away they want Varen to examine this Ogier trail.
Right.
And she's like, I can't do anything for him. Like he came out of the ways and he's just a shell of, they're like, there's nothing. She's essentially, there's nothing there, which is really sad also. But I guess
It
they
is.
know that this is a possibility.
Well, it's sad in the same way that someone being dead is sad, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
But Rand ends up explaining to them that, you know, they want to use the ways and they need to use it. It's the fastest way for them to travel for what they're doing. And they would like to have Loyal accompany them and guide them through the way gates. And they agree. So Loyal doesn't need to worry anymore. He gets to go on his adventure still with Treviran and do all this with the stipulation that Rand and them bring Loyal back to the setting once they're done. So they do have to bring him back. So anyway, Alar, one of the Ogier, takes them to the way gate that's there and open it. And Machin is there again. And Ingtar's like, yeah, we can't go into this way gate. Still too dangerous. So he ends up I believe Ingtar leaves to go back to a different town, if I remember correctly.
Ingtar?
I'm pretty sure it was Ingtar.
No.
What were they talking about then? Unless they were talking about a way gate in a different town.
Oh, so they can't use the way gates, and so they just decide to. I mean, they could go to another way gate, but they think that it might just be the same thing. Like if Machin Shin, it's never behaved this way before. They think there's something to do with Rand or something, and so they decide to instead go to a portal stone, try to do a portal stone.
Right. And Huron mentions the portal stone, and Rand says that they can go to Kinslayer's dagger, but it's going to take them a few days to get there.
Right. Well, and so Ingtar does say, well, I'm going to go back to Carrion and I'm going to force Barthan. I'm going to find a way to force Barthanes to tell me more. And that maybe that's what you're thinking. He's thinking about going back to town.
That's what I'm thinking about. Because Rand says, you know, if we're going to use a portal stone, there is one in Kinslayer's dagger, but it's going to take us a few days to get there, and we can probably use it. And after that, Alar's like, there's a closer way gate, like we can take you to it, which is, or a closer portal stone, I believe. Not a way gate. Which is what happens in chapter 37 in what might be. So
indeed.
Alar and I think it's Juin.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. They take them to Rand. They take Rand and everyone to this nearby portal stone. And this is interesting. So Varen has some knowledge about the stones and how they work and, you know, the symbols that are on them, but she's just not strong enough to activate them. Right. And Rand ends up channeling. He focuses on the symbols of the stone that he wants to activate. But what ends up happening instead is they're all kind of shown these like different what if lives.
Yeah, I love this part.
Yeah, and Rand he sees so many different lives. Like I think it's over 100, like hundreds of lives. He, you know, dies at Winter Night when the Trollocs attack, and he marries Egwene in one, and Egwene dies in another one. And he has babies with Egwene in one. Just all these hundreds and hundreds of lives of what if, of what could have been. And in each instance, he repeatedly hears, I win again, lose Theron. Which is just wild. Because now I'm like, are you seeing lives that you may have lived in the past, and they're just kind of being shown to you with the people in your life right now? So in the past, was there a time that, you know, there was a similar Winter Night, for example, where you were killed, and then, you know, he won again, lose Theron in that past life. Anyway, that's the connection I took from it. But
Right. Well, I just liked the different things that, but there's kind of a lot of different similar themes
Hmm.
of what happened. Like different threads of his life. He loved Elaine, he loved
Right.
Egwene, but these different characters kept popping up in his thing, and a lot of times he could channel, and or he just had black moods and he didn't know that he could channel. But and at some point the last battle has clearly been fought elsewhere, and they're about to overwhelm the two rivers, so they all go to fight, and
Mhm.
instead, like, he's kind of mad, he's half crazy, and so he goes and he just shoots at the black the Dark One's banner the whole time. And
Mhm.
and every time it's like he's missed his potential. And I don't know, it's kind of sad and scary and whatever. I just thought it was very interesting to see all the different what ifs.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so he he sees this from channeling the portal stone, but then at the same time they do end up traveling to Toman Head. But somehow 4 months have passed, so they've actually lost time. They did not catch up at all.
Right.
um
Well, and Rand is worried because if he doesn't show up at
yeah.
Falma or whatever at Toman's Head,
Mhm.
then Padan Fane is threatened to go destroy or mess with the two rivers.
Right. And I mean, the other thing here too is 4 months have passed, but somehow like it hasn't really had an effect on Matt. So he's still about the same from what he was beforehand, and probably only has still another couple of weeks or so before they need to get that dagger back.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, so they're there, and Varen's just going around the group trying to heal them towards the end of it. But that's the chapter. That's chapter 37.
Fancy.
Hmm.
And that's it for them, right?
For
For this
them.
section, yeah. Like for this segment that we're going to be talking about. So they're on Toman's Head,
Mhm.
and yeah. So the next chapter is we go to the White Tower.
Yeah, so we're in chapter 38 practice. So Egwene is in her room in the White Tower, and she's with Nynaeve and Min, and she's just practicing channeling. And now that she's gotten a taste for it, she just keeps doing it. And eventually Elaine comes into the room to let them know that King Galdrian is dead. Uh, so we know why.
Yep.
And afterwards, Leandrin comes into the room and kind of scolds Gwen for practicing and makes Min and Elaine leave. And she is talking to Nynaeve and Egwene and is telling them that, Rand is in trouble. Moraine has sent letters asking about Egwene and Nynaeve to make sure they're good. And she wants Nynaeve and Egwene to meet Leandrin at the Ogier Grove, and to tell no one because there are black Aja in the tower, and they just need to come alone,
Right.
which is funny. And she leaves, and afterwards Min and Elaine come back into the room, and they've heard everything. They were in Elaine's room and they overheard everything, and they're like, if Rand's in trouble, we're coming too. So the group is sticking together.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Any thoughts other than Leandrin is scummy?
A total B. Yeah.
Total B.
Yeah. It's I don't even know. So I thought it was
Mhm.
interesting, first off, that they so we don't know that, like, this is happening kind of after they all went to Toman Head. Like,
Right.
it's happening in the time period that, like, Rand and his group, like, kind of just disappeared from the earth for 4 months.
Right. And
Like,
actually, that's right, because Egwene even she makes reference to the fact that she hasn't had a dream about Rand in months.
right, yeah, that's a good point too.
Mhm.
And then I love that, Elaine mentions that King Goldrian is dead.
Mhm.
And so it's like Tom's like, if I have one last person to kill, and then we learn from Elaine that the king is dead.
Yeah, exactly.
And then of course we know Leandrin, like we've seen all these scenes this book of her just being sketchy as hell, and we just want to punch her in the mouth. But they're, I mean, it's true because she's just so backhanded about everything. But she's the way she treats everyone is just awful. And at the same time, they haven't necessarily had the very worst experience with her. They don't know anything more, so they trust her to some degree. They've been trained to trust Aes Sedai, and so that's what they're doing. They're following what she said, and you know, I just think it's such a scary thing. She's like, you can't tell anyone because anyone could be a dark, but it's, you know, anyone could be Black Aja, any, and it's like, well, okay, so, but at the same time, how do we know about you?
Exactly.
How do we know we can trust you? Like, if the Black Aja can exist, then it means that the people in it can lie, like the nice sisters, gosh. The the Nice Sisters are a Star Wars reference, guys, by the way. But if there are indeed Black Aja sisters, like they'd have to be able to lie about the existence of being, you know, of being on the Black Aja. So like how can you trust what Leandrin's saying here?
And this is the other thing, like if she's saying that there are Black Aja in the tower, if you know that, then you would know theoretically who at least one, let's say at least one of the Black Aja would be. In which case, wouldn't you be like, don't trust Alana because she's a Black Aja? Like,
Could be.
Wouldn't you name them? Like, it just seems very.
Well, how she might not, she might have been able to just see like their actions, the consequences, or the results of their actions, you know. But yeah, like one way or another, what she's saying is not like, it doesn't really hold up to that much scrutiny. But the girls are like, oh well, we have to trust Aes Sedai. I don't know, it's just this really weird thing. I had my share of eye rolling moments, but you know, I like Nynaeve is pretty difficult with her, but at the same time she just kind of capitulates anyways. So
well, and we end up seeing it. So in the next chapter, in the last one we're going to cover, Flight from the White Tower, they end up going, like all four of the girls leave the White Tower and they're in, you know, regular clothing. They're trying to blend in, and they get to the stables, they get horses, and they end up meeting Leandrin at the Ogier Grove. And she is mad that Elaine and Min are there. Like, she was like, I told you to tell no one. And you know, they do end up saying like, we overheard everything, so we were gonna come. They didn't tell us, we just overheard it. But Leandra kind of, you know, says that she had plans though for Elaine and Min to be taken care of. And it's just the way it's phrased. You're like, taken care of like they'll be okay, or taken care of like you're gonna have them killed. Like, what's going on here? But she ends up opening the way gate where they are, and they all go in. She is extremely vague about how long they're going to be in there for. You know, like they're going to leave when she says they're going to leave the ways. And they make their way through. They're camping there. They're all kind of, you know, sort of staying away from Leandrin, but also staying with her because she's guiding them. And I just find this was funny in juxtaposition of what Rand was thinking earlier when he was at the party, and he's like, oh, like if I'm going to be with anyone, it would be Egwene and like whatnot. And Egwene and the girls are having this conversation. She's like, oh, well, I'm probably not going to get married anyway. So if one of you wants to marry Rand, like that would be fine. And it's just very like, you guys are not on the same page at all.
Yeah.
Poor communication skills.
Right. Well, she did like, that was bravado though too, is represented kind of. So I mean, she doesn't want, she still has feelings for him, presumably, but
I think this might be like her way of trying to to stamp it out a little bit and squash it down. And she says like, oh, I'll be okay because I'm not going to be with him. She's trying to will it into existence that she'll be okay.
Yeah, it's totally
So,
convincing, Egwene. No,
yeah,
nicely done.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But this ends up ending that they wake up, they keep going, and Leandrin's found the way gate to Toman Head and opens it so that they can leave. And this is where she wanted to take them. And that's that. That's the whole thing.
The whole dang thing.
The whole dang thing.
So who's the Mac?
Oh man, I don't know. I feel like Matt is a cop out. He is pretty annoying and rude in these chapters.
I don't think it's a cop out. I think he's
pretty ruthless in these chapters. It's definitely not Rand. It's definitely not Loyal or Perrin. Leandrin isn't annoying. She's just, that she's up to something.
Well, yeah, she's sketchy as hell. She's aloof. She's mean. I mean, there's nothing likable about her.
Right, but that doesn't make her the annoying character. Matt is just, Matt.
Matt's like, I don't want to be a servant. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Oh, Loyal, I'm gonna make fun of, like you thinking that your own species is attractive. Like, oh, I'm gonna make fun of your marriage customs. I'm just gonna be
a total jerk.
Yeah, I don't like Matt in this section at all. He's just, every annoying part of him is showing, and no redeeming qualities, in my opinion. Like every once in a while he'll walk things back just a little bit, but otherwise, we can just. I think he's the Mac.
Yeah, he's the Mac.
He's the Matt. He's also Matt.
Matt is the Mac. Okay.
He's the Mac and he's Matt.
Yeah. That's that is everything from this one. So next episode, we're gonna do 11 chapters instead of 10 because we're at the end of the book.
We are.
So we're gonna do chapters 40 to 50, and we will be done the Great Hunt.
Oh, and we got done in record time.
That was fast
for us.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts?
No, it's late. Let's go.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out.
Oh, you're thanking me.
Yeah.
I didn't think. You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, cool. That was genuine.
Anytime.
All right, guys. So yeah, we'll be back next week, and thank you so much for listening. May you always find water and shade.